Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Raising Bulls, brought to you by the Beautiful Game Network at bgn.fm and Roughneck Scarves. We are the only podcast dedicated to the New York Red Bulls 2 of the USL Championship. I think I keep forgetting to say championship, so I'm working on that. Tonight, we're going to talk about the game that wasn't, even though there was a little bit, so we can talk about what was there, but it's all been erased because of the weather delay. We've got an interview with Goose from the Talking Jacks podcast, helping us preview the match this weekend against Charlotte Independence, and we'll do our normal deep dive into that and look at the current standings in USL. Tonight, joining me, as always, you hear him interjecting a little bit so far, it's Bill Toomey.
Hey, Joe, how's it going?
Not too bad. How you doing, Bill?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm hoping that we'll be able to see a full-length soccer game this upcoming weekend.
That's the only way they could slow this team down. They have to cancel the game.
Right. Now, if they could kind of swap that and make that happen for the first team, I'd be good with that. Red Bulls 2.
Look, I think...
Just had to throw that out there.
Yeah,
Red
you know.
Bulls 2 have been playing pretty awesome so far this season, so... Yeah,
I think
great luck.
I think it's fair to say that the first team is turning it around. Even though they lost last week, I think they looked a lot better. But let's move on to this team. Very little to talk about other than they were dominant in their 20 or so minutes that they played this match. Tom Barlow with a beautiful goal, a nice redirect off of a Andy Ivan cross into the box. Ivan did a lot to set up the goal with a sweet dribble around his opponent. And, you know, it was sort of a typical type of Red Bull goal. It was nice that we saw Barlow get on the board so early and, you know, look comfortable, where he's had a little bit of struggles in the, you know, keeping the ball on frame so far to the season. But obviously, look, he's had a rough time hitting the net, but he's got, it would have been 4 goals with this one. So I think it's okay to be, you know, not too down on him for that.
Yeah, and kind of like we saw from the first game all the way through, you know, just last weekend, he's trying to improve every single game. Every game he's trying to get goals in, which is awesome to see. Yeah,
and look, it's nice to see Andy Ivan pop up down with the second team. I think he probably warrants a longer stay with the first team, and, you know, some minutes late in the match. We saw another guy that's been doing really well for Red Bull 2 get some minutes against Minnesota. He had a pretty bad miss in the match, but Marcus Epps looked good out there, and I think his time with the 2 team really helped prepare him for inclusion in the match. And the difference between what he looked like against Columbus versus what he looked like against Minnesota, I think, was kind of night and day, despite the fact that he didn't end up getting, you know, a goal or an assist.
But when he came on the field, the whole style of play changed, which was awesome to see. He was pushing as hard as he could to make things happen.
Yeah, overall, I think a big problem with the first team is confidence. And when you get a guy who's coming off of the kind of performances that Epps has had with the 2 team, he's full of confidence. So hopefully that's something that can translate to the rest of the side. Man of the match, there's not really any, but we're just going to give it to Tom Barlow because he scored the goal. Congrats, Tom.
Yeah, congrats, Tom.
The game that wasn't you were the man in.
You just have to do the same goal again when the game gets played again.
That's exactly right. The pressure's on. This team would have had 10 points should they have been able to see that game through. And that would have left them in 3rd place right now, as it stands, because they have got 2 games in hand. They're in 6th place. Let's look at the top 10 in the Eastern Conference. Top down, St. Louis, 13 points. Tampa Bay, 11 points. The first 4 teams on this list are undefeated. And the only other undefeated team in the Eastern Conference right now is the New York Red Bulls.
Red Bulls too.
North Carolina FC, 8 points. Charleston Battery, 8 points. Nashville SC, 7 points. Then the Red Bulls 2, 7 points. Beth Steel, right after us, 7 points. Indy 11, 6 points. Louisville City climbing back up. They're still having a rough go. They've only won twice in their first 5 matches. They've got 6 points. And then Bob Lilly and the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, 10th place, 5 points. Under the line, in order, Memphis, Atlanta, Ottawa, Birmingham, Loudoun, Swope Park, Charlotte, and Hartford. That is not great for most of those teams. I think there's not really a big surprise between Birmingham and Loudoun being under the line because they're new, and I think it's going to take some time. Same thing with Hartford. Hartford 0-5. No, not even a single point.
No points for Hartford.
Extrapolating this data won't do us any good right now because there's so little of it, but they could be in for a historically bad season. I hope that they can turn it around, but we'll have to see. The New York Red Bulls too, yes, they had to abandon that match, but over their next few matches, they have a somewhat forgiving schedule. So they've got Charlotte, who is struggling this year, away this weekend. Then they return home for 4 straight at home. Hartford on Wednesday, April 17th. Loudoun United on April 20th. Indy 11 on April 28th. Indy is probably the most difficult team in that stretch, although they've had a few struggles to start the year. And then Wednesday, May 1st, Birmingham. It's conceivable that they walk out of this with 15 points over the next 5 games because these are all teams that they could beat. But, we'll get back to that in a little bit. Any surprises so far for you? Is it still just St. Louis that they're doing so well?
Yeah, I wasn't still expecting St. Louis to be doing so well on the top of the table. Plus, I mean, it's kind of hard to say, too, because a lot of these teams either have 4 or 5 games played, and we're stuck still with just 3 games under our belts so far this season. So, there's Pittsburgh still in 11th place, so that's kind of still a little bit shocking.
No, Pittsburgh's in 10th. Indy 11 is another team that's only played 3 matches, and that's true for Ottawa, Birmingham, Loudoun, and Swope Park. So, it's possible that there's a shakeup in the table over the next couple of weeks as well. Out west, where there's been more consistent games for all the teams so far, Tulsa is still riding high, but now they are tied with 3 other teams at the top of the table: Portland Timbers 2, Sac Republic, and New Mexico. That's spots 1 through 4. Then LA Galaxy 2, still keeping up with that pack on 9 points. And Real Monarchs SLC after them at 8. Colorado and OKC Energy with 7. Tacoma Defiance and Fresno FC with 6. Just under that line, Reno, El Paso, Orange County, Austin Bold, San Antonio, Las Vegas Lights, who they're not winless anymore. They did win 1-0 over the Monarchs. We talked about that last week. Phoenix Rising. Josteen. Yeah. Our good friend Junior Flemings is on that squad and doing well, but they're struggling. 4 draws in 4 tries. Hopefully they can turn that around. And then Rio Grande Valley FC at the bottom of the West, 2 points only through their first 5 matches. They picked up a draw against El Paso and New Mexico United. That's really all we got for the first half. You know what? Actually, let's take a look at Golden Boot and whoever's in the lead for assists. Lucas Lobo still up there for Tulsa with 7, followed by Cameron Iwasa with 5, Brian Brown with 4, and so on. Tom Barlow, should that goal have counted, would have been right in the mix there. He's still on 3 goals in 3 matches though, so not doing terrible. And then for assists, Eric Williamson of Portland Timbers 2 and Rodrigo da Costa for Tulsa Roughnecks each have 5. And Marcus Epps, who I'm not sure we're going to see a ton of him with the Red Bulls 2, depending on how he progresses with the MLS side. He's on 2 assists. I don't think there's any other Red Bull players that are in the top 10. And then, all right, we don't need to talk about clean sheets, I don't think. John McCarthy is leading the pack right now with 4. Tampa Bay, 5 matches, 4 shutouts. Not too shabby. Andrew Tenari is on that team, but he hasn't played a ton. But hopefully we get to see him a little bit more this year. Really like that guy. Okay. That's all we've got for you in this first segment. Yes, it's short, I know, but we don't have a match to talk about. We're going to take a break now. When we come back, we're going to talk to Goose from the Talking Jacks podcast about Charlotte Independence. So stick around. And we're back. I know our first segment's a little crazy. We didn't have a game to properly recap this week because of the weather delay. But we're back on track because segment 2 is always our interview, and we've got Goose from Talking Jacks joining us to help us preview this match against Charlotte Independence. Hey, Goose, how's it going?
It is going well. Glad to be here, and thanks for having me a part of the show. Absolutely.
It's great to have you. Talk to us a little bit about what's gone on with Charlotte so far this season. Obviously, last year, about midway through the year, it looked like things were going to go very well, and then it changed a little bit. So what's the state of the Independence right now?
It's definitely a transition year. We have moved from Mike Jeffries being our head coach, who was the only head coach we knew for the entirety of the club's history back starting in 2015. He's moved to a GM role, and then we brought in I think it was there was one of the USL pundits that described it as the most interesting move of the offseason, bringing in a Gaelic football coach as our coach. And he has had some soccer experience as well, but it's very recently, like 2012, 2013, I want to say. He transitioned to starting to work with Celtic over in Scotland, of course. And he's got his UEFA A license as well. He's very academically experienced, I would say. But this is his first coaching gig as being the head coach. So it's been interesting. He definitely wants to play a different type of style than Jeffries. We've had a lot of turnover on the roster. If I'm remembering correctly, we brought back 4 players, technically speaking. Brandon Miller, Jorge Herrera, Joel Johnson being another one, Alex Martinez, Jake Ehrman being another one of those as well. And we returned after Enzo went up to play for the Rapids. He has come back to Charlotte, and that was a big addition in the offseason. One of a couple big ones, I would say, being Dominic Oduro is another big one. He's got a lot of MLS experience. Still pacey, even though he's a little bit older, of course. And it's been an interesting transition from that because, to be honest with you, us in Charlotte, the supporters are pretty used to roster change. We've seen that fairly often, more often than not, I should say. But the main issue is this year we brought in a lot of people late. Mm-hmm. I want to say we had 12 or 13 players on roster going into the first week of the season. So that made it a little interesting.
That sounds like what we're used to.
Yeah. The other interesting transition, too, is we lost the affiliation with the Rapids. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing that kind of changed things for us as well, because we would kind of go into the first week of the season, or first 2 weeks of the season, before the season, I should say, and we would wait for 4 or 5 loanies from the Rapids to come down. That's not happening, of course.
Right.
So it's definitely been a transition year in that sense, and the first 4 games we've played have been, you can tell that we've got new pieces in there, that people showed up a little bit late, because one of our starting center backs, really 2 of them, were announced the week of the season. So it's been interesting. It's definitely been some learning curves, and some bumps in the road, to put it simply.
With all the roster changes, is there one player who really stands out?
I would say, if I had to pinpoint one, I don't want to lean too heavily to Enzo, just because we're pretty used to him. He has been a little bit different this year, but the main addition, I'll say, that I didn't actually mention at the top of the roster changes is we brought in Hugh Roberts, who's, I want to say, a 6'5" center back. He's had a lot of USL experience, USL top 11, I want to say, a couple years ago. And he's a center back. Oddly enough, I was curious if we may be able to bring in the year before. So I was really happy to see him come in, especially after losing 2 of our mainstays at center back, being Bilal Duckett and Henry Kalungi. we needed to make a good addition there. And he's been really darn good. He's been winning a lot of balls in the air, which we've really never had in Charlotte, taking away the opportunity on corners and things like that. And he's been a good mainstay in the back line, where we have had some transition here and there, just with international duty and injuries and things like that. So, yeah.
Looking at Enzo Martinez rejoining the team, how cruel of the Colorado Rapids to misplay him and put him in a sort of more defensive posture when he was with them, and not only decide to send him back, but they canceled the whole partnership right then.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. I always wanted to keep track of him playing over there, and it did keep me more involved with the Rapids than years prior, to be honest with you, just because I wanted to see him succeed. Mm-hmm. What I will say that's interesting about him playing a much more defensive role is he's a different player this year. And you can tell just based on interviews and the way he's been playing this year. In years prior, he's had double-digit goals, 15, 17 goals, let's say, and he's been the main goal scorer on the team. He's said this year that he may not score a lot of goals. He's going to be more of a facilitator. I want to say this year he's had 2 assists. Yes, I'm accurate in that. Good thinking. But he's had 2 assists this year, has not gotten a goal as of yet, but he's been very dynamic. I think he's essentially playing a role where he's going to move around the pitch, and the coach is going to kind of give him freedom to do that, which is it's going to be everywhere on the pitch, quite frankly. He's going to be taking the ball away from people in duels and giving some good passes. And when we played Charleston this past weekend, there was 2 defenders that cut him off on the sideline. He dribbled right past him, knocked the ball around, and got around him. Fortunately, nothing else happened after that, as some may have seen him at the score line.
Right.
But yeah, he's a different player this year, and I think he's more well-rounded in some ways because of that.
What does Charlotte have to do this weekend to get the first win of the season against the New York Red Bulls 2?
Really just combine all the little steps of progress we've made. The outcomes of the games we've played this year probably have not looked great on paper. I'll admit that. Letting up a decent bit of number of goals and things like that. But there has been spurts of connecting passes in the midfield. I think the biggest bit of progress I saw in the last game is we had a good bit of connecting passes between the back line and the midfield. We just couldn't, for whatever reason, connect the midfield to the attacking players, being Damo Duro or Enzo Martinez. So it's really going to be getting into a rhythm early, and controlling the ball as well. I hate to say that we really need a win this week, because part of me feels like we really do need a win, but I also do know our history against the Red Bull and the way they've played this year and the way they continue to have played over the last couple of years or so, that they're a high-pressing team, and we've not done the best against high-pressing teams. It's most of the teams we've played against this year have been high-pressing teams and high energy, and really it's just a matter of cleaning up mistakes too, to be honest with you, because the goals we've allowed, I hate to say they've been fluky, because there have been some stunning goals. Just looking at the second goal we let up by Zico Lewis.
Zico.
Yeah, he put in what could be called a banger.
Yeah.
It was a good goal. But there's been I hate to say it, but a lot of 1 out of 10 goals like that, and just unfortunate lapses on defense. So we're really going to have to clean that up to limit chances. It's going to be the big thing to do this week.
One of the things that so you mentioned that Zico Lewis goal, it comes off a throw-in, and there's just not any real pressure or closing down of Zico, and I think that's kind of maybe a bit of a pattern of what you've seen from the goals that Charlotte's given up this year, because a lot of them have come on low crosses, and especially kind of cutbacks from the end line, where there's a lot of sort of ball watching. that's caught the team. But let's talk about the organization as a whole. You know, you're still in Sportsplex at Matthews. Do you have any update on what's going on with the stadium?
Yeah, so we're kind of in I don't want to say wait and see, but we're in a little bit of we're going to be in Matthews for the next couple of years at the very least. There has been some progress made with the downtown, or what we call uptown in Charlotte, stadium looming. There's been some bumps in the road that have been outside of the organization's control, to be honest with you, with that initial MLS bid that was kind of derailed it for a moment. But it has been, the financing has been approved. Right now, I think it's just a matter of breaking ground, essentially. And there has been some hints and teases on the Twitterverse. I guess Jake Edwards was just at the office this past week. And I mean, he may have just been by for a chat, but I kind of feel like something may have been solidified with that. The tentative date is going to be 2021. I'm a little skeptical that that'll happen, but maybe optimistic that it will happen, because that will be a major benefit for the club. Matthews is a very nice facility, I'll say. It's been the best facility we've had. It's been the most consistent home we've had, because we've been a very transient club. We've played, I think it's at 4 to 5 different locations for games. Kind of been here and there. But the Matthews is very nice, but it's not a long-term solution. Not for a USL Championship squad, I'll definitely say that. In order for us to solidify ourselves as a club and as an organization that belongs in championship, we're going to need to move to uptown. And that is going to happen. It's just a matter of 2021, 2022. I'm not going to say the next one because I don't want that to happen. But
Sure.
Yeah, it's just a matter of when it will happen, because the current facility, Memorial Stadium, it will need to have a big number of renovations. But it's going to be I believe a 10,000 seat stadium. And it's in the heart of uptown, right next to one of the colleges there too. So it's waiting for us. Just a matter of getting it all taken care of.
Well, look, I mean, if there's, I guess it's true for both New York clubs, but if there's a club in this country that understands the long and arduous wait for a stadium, it is definitely the Red Bulls.
Yeah,
I can't tell you how many years it was like, well, we're a couple of years away. It was like Cold Fusion.
Team that plays on a baseball field in New York City. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're in a bad spot for that too. Before we let you go, we've got our lightning round. Are you familiar with our lightning round?
Yeah, I believe I am. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not much of a surprise. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Okay. Popcorn, yes or no?
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate a good bowl of popcorn. I'm a normal butter popcorn. I don't do the whole fancy caramel and all that kind of stuff. More just butter popcorn.
Star Wars or Star Trek?
100% Star Wars. Nothing against Star Trek, but I just never got into it.
Marvel or DC?
Marvel. Definitely Marvel.
Sonic or Mario?
Ooh. I'm going to say Sonic. I definitely grew up playing some of the different Sonic video games, and I just never gravitated towards Mario. I don't know why.
Interesting. If you were on death row, what is your last meal?
Oh, that's a good question. Something I've never thought about. This is probably going to sound really lame. Probably just, I guess, a good cup of lasagna, or a plate of lasagna. I don't think you eat lasagna in a cup.
I wasn't gonna call you on it.
Some garlic bread, a good stout, imperial stout. Let's go to an imperial stout to drink.
That sounds like a fine meal. I don't think you have to ever be worried about answering that question. I cannot remember the player, but they said that their final meal, they would be happy if it was Chipotle. So
I feel like that's a heavy meal to go into the next doom there. But,
well, I
but
mean,
that's a good,
lasagna and a stout. Come on.
Yeah,
Can't beat that.
I did just contradict
That's
myself.
like a winning combination.
I also forgot to ask, do you have a prediction for this weekend?
Oh, I will predict goals. That's one thing I'll say. I'll say we'll get let's say a 3-2 victory for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's
I'll
very
take
fair.
that.
Tell the people where they can follow you on Twitter.
Yeah, so I can be followed on at the Soccer Goose on Twitter. There's also Talkin Jacks can be found at Talkin Jacks. There's no G, so it's just Talkin Jacks.
Very nice. Goose, thank you so much for coming on, and we wish you and the club nothing but the best of luck for this weekend. Not too much luck, but just enough.
Just enough to get a point, maybe.
Yeah, there you go. And when we come back, we're going to do our in-depth preview of that match, so stick around. And we're back for our final segment, looking at this weekend's game against Charlotte Independence. Obviously, this is in Charlotte, North Carolina. They play at Sportsplex at Matthews. Right now, Independence are 0-3-1 through their first 4 matches with a goal differential of -4. Not good. Not good at all. They are 0-1-1 at home this season. Their losses overall, they lost 3-2 to Indy 11. 1-0 to St. Louis, and 2-0 to Charleston. A pattern formed in these matches, which I brought up a little bit with Ben. It seems like they really struggle with clearing the ball once it's in the box and defending against low crosses. So keep an eye on that. The other goal that they gave up so far this year, I mean, it is. Well, it's not the only other goal they gave up. But in those losses, a beautiful goal by Zico Lewis. He takes a throw in from the right side of the box, cuts back onto his preferred left foot, and just curls it in. Picture perfect. It was the kind of goal where I'm watching it thinking, where was that when you were here, Zico? Right. That it was the type of goal that you expect from a guy who made the speech at the draft the way Zico did. But congrats, Zico. We're glad you're doing well. They also had a draw earlier in the season against Atlanta United 2. It was 3-3. Atlanta United jumped to a 2-0 lead early in that match. And Charlotte battled back. They got themselves on top. I'm about to sneeze. Thank you. They got themselves back on top and then gave up a goal in the 94th minute of the match to drop the points at home. Really, really awful. But they did it against Atlanta United too, who had Romario Williams, former Charleston Battery player Romario Williams, who had 2 goals in the match and looked very, very good. For Charlotte, their leaders, Dominic Odoro, former Red Bull Dominic Odoro, 2 goals, and then Jorge Herrera, Kevin George, and Andrew Gutman each have 1. Assists are coming from the Flying Martinezes, Alex and Enzo. They each have 2, and then another one for Jake Araman, who has 1. Looking at the stats breakdown, the Red Bulls solidly take our standard defense and attack in this. They pretty much on defense easily win all of those battles, aerial duels won, and tackle success, and goals conceded. They've conceded 5 less goals than Charlotte to this point. Charlotte passes quite a bit. They like to hold possession. They average 100 more passes than the Red Bulls 2 per match, but they don't take a lot of chances. They don't pass forward a ton. Looking at the stats, Red Bulls play 46% of their passes forward. That's kind of crazy. Most other teams are a lot more balanced in terms of the way they want to distribute, but we know that the Red Bulls are very, very direct in the attack. And most of the goals that Charlotte has conceded have come from headers. So, keep an eye out there. I think 5 of the goals they've conceded have been... Or no, sorry.
Yeah, I think the game against Charlotte this weekend's pretty straightforward. I mean, they've been struggling a lot at home. They've only had 1 draw so far on the season, and even with what we saw, last weekend with the game that never finished, the Red Bulls, they started off pretty fast as soon as the game began there, with Tom Barlow scoring 8 minutes in. So I think that game would actually help push them with the win this weekend, because they're going to be pumped to play a full game of soccer. So I definitely think that's going to help. And with the way that Charlotte's been playing, I think it's going to be an easy win for Red Bulls too this weekend on the road.
One thing that I would remind everyone is former Red Bull players tend to have a way of inserting themselves into games and really putting the nails to the Red Bulls themselves. And we've seen that a couple times at Red Bull too. Andy Najem has gotten them a couple times when he was with Beth Steele and Memphis this last meeting. Junior Flemings. I don't think Brandon scored on the team, Brandon Allen, but Dominic Adoro is on this squad. He is still pacey at his advanced age, and given the Red Bulls' penchant for pressing and leaving space behind, that could be something to keep an eye on. Now, if they want him to play a hold-up target striker role, that's not going to work out. But if they just want him to run in behind, I think that he could be very, very dangerous against this Red Bull side.
Yeah, and he's only 31, so he's still prime time, and I still remember that pizza haircut he had back on the Columbus days. That's how I remembered him.
he's only 31?
Yeah.
Oh my God. That can't be. How can that be?
How can that be? Let me just verify that. I'm pretty sure I read that before. Let's see. Wikipedia says 33. Sorry, he's 33. So 33 is...
Just from the math in my head, I was like, that he was with the Red Bulls too. Red Bulls in 2009.
Right. He's played with so many different MLS teams, from the Red Bulls to the Dynamo, Chicago Fire, the Crew, which we've talked about, Toronto, which I don't remember him being with Toronto.
Really?
I remember him being with Montreal. Yeah.
He was on that Toronto squad. I don't know if that's the first year Michael Bradley came over.
2014 that he played. He had 24 appearances.
I think that is the first year that they had Bradley, and they had that Brazilian kid.
Yes.
I don't remember his name. I just couldn't imagine that he was as young as you were saying. That's definitely something to keep an eye on. I think that they should be able to handle this. Let's get a score prediction from you, Bill.
With last week's game ending early, I'm going with a 3-0 win on the road for New York Red Bulls 2.
Yeah, I think that they're going to be able to continue their success. Based on what I watched and commented on in terms of them really struggling with those low crosses, that is a recipe for disaster against the Red Bulls, and not closing guys down and giving them space. That's just asking for trouble against this team. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think it's going to be lopsided, but I'm going to call it a 2-0 victory. I don't think it's going to get out of hand. I feel like 3-0 would maybe be out of hand for this squad. No? All right.
I think anything's possible with this squad. They're ready to score, it seems like. I mean, let's see what Tom Barlow comes up with this weekend.
Yes, indeed. And potentially Brian White. I like watching the two of them up top. We know the first team played 2 up top to varying degrees of success. I know a lot of people are down on the first team, but I thought that this past weekend should have given them some hope despite the fact they lost. The only other thing to really, I guess, call out, congrats to Los Dos Kai Koreniuk. He won Player of the Week this week. He scored 2 goals against, who were they playing? 2 goals in the span of 4 minutes in the second half and added an assist on the final goal. That's a pretty good week, I would say.
Yeah.
It doesn't say who they were playing, though, still. Tulsa. Oh, hey, look, they clipped Tulsa.
Wow.
There are
Tulsa's
too many.
still in first place, right?
Yeah, they're still in first place. There are too many teams to follow, and now I feel like a fool. But congrats, Kai. Great job. The rest of anybody to mention from the rest of the 11 this week? Leo Fernandez, Jose Villarreal, long time. Oh no, it's not Jose. It's Jaime Villarreal. Oh, interesting. Yeah. Sometimes I know things, sometimes I don't. Oh, there is somebody else to call out in this team of the week. Douglas Martinez, former Red Bull Douglas Martinez. He was up in the player for the week voting, but obviously did not win that. He had a pair of assists. He won 7 of 13 duels in the Monarchs front line, beating Reno 1868 FC 3-1. Congrats, Douglas Martinez. Glad to see you getting some reps, even though it's not with the Red Bulls. That's it. It's kind of a short show tonight. We didn't have that game to talk about, so I had to rely entirely on preview and that interview. But we're happy to bring it to you, and we're happy to be here each and every week. This is episode, I want to say it's 103, maybe 104?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Let's see. Yeah, this is 103. My aim right now is to make sure that we have a guest every week. It's been difficult in years past. I think it's a little bit easier this year, especially when we get fellow journalists and podcasters to hop on. So thank you, Goose from Talkin Jacks, for hopping on today. If you want to follow us on Twitter, I am @_Joe Goldstein.
And I'm at Bill T. NJ.
And if you'd like to follow the show, and we hope you do, we are at Raising Bull Cast. That's one bull, Raising Bull Cast. And of course, that is on Twitter. You can also follow my work and Bill's work at the Red Bulls News Network, RB News Network on Twitter, or rbnn.us on the interwebs. Find us. Make sure you go there, read all the content. We've got lots of great writers there. We are on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, all kinds of podcast networks. Wherever you get your shows, find us, rate us, review us. It helps. And if we're not on your podcast app of choice, please let us know, and we'll work to get ourselves up there. We're, of course, part of the BGN.FM family. They've got a ton of great shows. Foxtrot, Bethlehem Blast Furnace, Sock Takes, Rising as One, Down the Valley, Amateur Hour, featuring Goose, who was on the show tonight, and so much more. Make sure you go there. They've got great podcasts, great written content, ton of great stuff for you guys to follow. And last but not least, we want to thank our sponsor, Roughneck Scarves, the official scarf supplier of MLS, USL, and US Soccer. Get custom scarves for your group or team at roughneckscarves.com. For myself, Bill Toomey, and Goose, thank you very much, and have a great night.